film begins with footage captured by Ebru, a documentarian, as she accompanies an exorcist named Farouk to perform an exorcism on a woman allegedly possessed by a 1,300-year-old jinn. Farouk attempts to expel the jinn, but it threatens them before fleeing. They then visit a village, where Farouk performs a ritual to help a woman named Hatich, who is suffering from supernatural influences. He warns the villagers about the dangers of engaging in witchcraft. The next day, Ebru meets Farouk at his house and asks about the possessed woman. He explains her strange behavior and the ineffectiveness of medication. Ebru proposes a scientific study, suggesting she will bring a patient for Farouk to cure. She introduces the case of her childhood friend, Kubra, who is suffering from mysterious symptoms. They set out for Kubra's village, Kibladere, and encounter strange occurrences along the way, including a woman's cry and an attack by an unknown entity. They also discover a Masonic sign and weird objects hanging on a tree, indicating the presence of evil. Upon arriving at Kubra's house, they meet her mother, Rafika, and sister, Ezra. Tensions arise between Rafika and her sister Fatima, who opposes Farouk's involvement. Despite this, Farouk and Ebru proceed with their investigation, setting up cameras in the house. They learn from the villagers that Kubra was possessed by a jinn and had attacked her fiancé, Erdal, with a knife during her henna night. Ezra shows them the footage, and Farouk discovers that Kubra had walked to the wish tree in her sleep. He senses an evil presence in the house and notices Kubra watching him from her room. Ebru brings Kubra downstairs and assures her of their friendship and medical support. Farouk questions Kubra about her experiences, and she describes hearing a woman's voice urging her to kill Erdal. She also recalls a vision of being in a coffin and dying, only to be reborn with a single eye on her forehead. Rafika expresses her desperation to protect Kubra and agrees to Farouk's request to remove the evil eye beads from the house. Farouk performs a ritual with Kubra, asking her to inhale the scent of prayers he has prepared. As she does so, the house shakes and her hands begin to burn. Farouk recites prayers to protect her from the jinns. Kubra becomes possessed and jumps off the bed. Farouk covers her with a black cloth and she speaks in a different language. Farouk discovers a message written in blood on his palm, indicating the presence of a mirror. He explains that this signifies complete possession by a jinn. That night, the jinn possesses Kubra again, and she stands in front of a mirror, her reflection moving independently. Farouk investigates and finds no one, but a shadow escapes. Kubra is seen staring at the camera before leaving the room. Farouk discovers Kubra standing in front of her mother and sister's room. The next morning, Ebru coughs up a strange object, shocking Rafika. Farouk explains that it is related to the possession. Farouk asks Ezra about the mirrors needed for the exorcism ritual. Ezra brings the mirrors to the house, and Farouk begins calling upon the jinns. He goes under a veil and senses the jinn's presence behind Ebru, warning her not to turn around. The veil flies into the air, and Farouk hands the camera to Ebru, instructing her to stay away. He discovers a symbol in the corner, indicating a death spell. They find strange objects in a toilet, including animal parts and voodoo dolls. Rafika and Ezra are disturbed and seek answers from Fatima, who hints at Rafika's past. Ebru and Farouk discover items related to witchcraft in Rafika's old house, raising suspicions about other individuals involved. Farouk reveals a spell cast upon Kubra while she was in her mother's womb, cursing her to be born cursed and for her father to die on the day of her birth. The spell also predicts that 14 days after her 23rd birthday, cruel jinns will devour her soul. Ebru questions if the curse took effect on Kubra's henna night as she turned 23. Kubra experiences terror, and Ebru suggests taking her to the hospital, suspecting a schizotypal personality disorder. However, Farouk insists on continuing the exorcism. Farouk attempts a second exorcism in a barn, reading prayers to expel the jinn. Kubra describes the jinn as a woman named Sare. Farouk threatens the jinn and burns the curse, enraging it. The jinn screams loudly, but Farouk continues the prayers, ultimately declaring that the jinn is killed and Kubra is saved. Rafika expresses her gratitude, and Ezra asks about the people who cast the spell. Farouk assures them that Kubra's safety is what matters. That night, Ebru notes that Kubra's vital signs appear normal, and she no longer feels the jinn's presence. However, the jinn possesses Kubra again, and she retrieves her wedding dress and the knife she used to kill her husband. She stares at the camera, and when Fatima checks on her, Kubra attacks and slashes her face. Kubra is found at the wish tree, standing inside a Masonic sign. the jinn declares that it won't die and will return 1,000 times. Farouk manages to get Kubra out of the circle and puts her in the car, but Ebru refuses to accompany them, accusing Farouk of being a fraud. The next day, Fatima returns and reveals that Kubra's father tried to strangle her as a baby, calling her the child of the devil. He died with the name Sari on his lips. Farouk seeks information about the number 7175 and learns that it is an ancient code related to the belief that Jesus was saved by Allah and lives on. The number, when written in Arabic numerals and read in Latin, spells vivo, meaning I am alive. This suggests that Sari wasn't killed, but buried alive. Farouk and Ebru return to Qibladare village, where they encounter the same shepherd and discover the number 7175 outside a house. They hear strange noises and see a black figure running past. Farouk enters a house and Ebru films something jumping inside. They find Ilyas, a villager, who reveals that the sins of Bilal, Kubra's father, and Remzi, Ebru's father, cursed the village. Ilyas shows them photos of deformed children and animals, explaining that Bilal and Remzi sought the help of jinns for treasure and then killed one, causing the curse. Ilyas also reveals that his wife, Zahuriesh, is a jinn named Zahuriesh. Zahuriesh leads Farouk to a room where he finds a deformed child with a single eye on his forehead. Farouk escapes, and Ilyas warns them that Zahuriesh wants them to leave as she fears the Zuzula jinns, who can harm them for talking about them. Farouk and Ebru discover handprints on their car and learn that to lift the curse, they must dig up the buried jinn, wrap it in a blessed shroud, and bury it elsewhere. They dig up the jinn, but Farouk asks Ebru not to film him during the burial. After Farouk returns, a jinn appears, and he tries to communicate with the clan, asking them to stop haunting Kubra. The jinn speaks in a different language, and Farouk tells Ebru that the jinns are gone. Ebru thanks Farouk for his cooperation, but they are interrupted by Ezra and Rafika, who inform them that Ilyas has called and Kubra's life is in danger. Rafika asks Ebru to stay with Kubra, and Farouk leaves alone. Ezra discovers a magical element in her bra, featuring pictures of Kubra and herself. She decides to use a hidden camera from now on, feeling scared. Farouk's friend Hidayat reveals that the number 7175 is an ancient code related to the belief that Jesus wasn't killed, but saved by Allah and lives on. Sare, the jinn, wasn't killed but buried alive, indicating a repeated deed. Farouk is confronted by a frightened Ilyas, who reveals that his wife has been captured by Sare's clan in revenge. Meanwhile, Ebru enters Kubra's room and finds her possessed by Sare, wearing black clothes and with a disfigured face. She tries to escape, but is trapped and beaten by Kubra's mother and sister. Ilyas discloses that it was a trap to lure Ebru back to the village. Sare cannot be killed, but can transfer from one body to another. Kubra's family plan to save their daughter and make Ebru suffer for her father's deeds. Ilyas is also captured by Sare's clan, and Farouk returns to find Kubra's aunt killed. He rushes to the cursed tree, calling out for Ebru, but Kubra's mother and sister attack him and throw him into a well. An injured Ebru tries to plead for help, but is ultimately buried alive with snakes. Farouk is rescued by villagers the next morning, but suffers amnesia due to his head injuries. Despite efforts to find Ebru, she is never found. Kubra's family escapes the village, and their whereabouts remain unknown.